Hi, folks. Ooh, that's loud. No, okay, I'll just keep shouting at my normal voice. Can I get just a big round of applause for Alex and for all the people who have been here today? And thanks for inviting me. Okie dokie. Right, let's start. Right, I'm going to try and... I don't want to be like... No, it's fine, it's fine. I'm just going to play with it for a while. Sorry, don't mind me. Right, good. I feel good. I feel good. Okay, Leith Light. So, I'm going to talk to you today, actually maybe a bit louder, about change and transforming your local area through culture and creativity, which is what I and a small band of people have done with Leith Light in the last 6 years. Just as a kind of precursor for folk that might not know much about Leith, Leith is a really special area of Edinburgh. It's the most special area of Edinburgh, I would say. Partly due to the fact that it was actually a completely separate borough for hundreds of years, as being a dock town, and actually was, completely independent. I think it was in the 20s that there was a referendum in Leith asking Leithers if they wanted to be part of Edinburgh, and they came back with a resounding no, and then they were made part of Edinburgh anyway, which is still a bone of contention to this day. Leith also has a number of kind of creative associations as well. Irvin Welsh is a Leither. He obviously based his famous novel Trainspotting in Leith. The Proclaimers wrote a famous song, Sunshine on Leith, which is, yes, good one, Leithers, which is the kind of official Hibernian Football Club theme tune, and if you're in a good Leith boozer, you'll hear it at the end of every night. And the godfather of British pop art, Eduardo Palozzi, was also born and bred in Leith, which not everyone knows. So there you go. Facts early in the morning. So yeah, the guys here wanted me to make this personal, so there's a picture of me. I suppose I just want to talk about my association with Leith. I'm actually not a Leither. Shock horror. I come from Glasgow, and I moved to Edinburgh originally to study English and Scottish Lit at uni, and I lived in kind of various student areas in Edinburgh, Newington. I moved to Newtown for a bit and didn't like it, and then moved to Leith 8 years ago, and it was really the first place that I'd lived in after kind of leaving Glasgow that felt like home. It had a real kind of community spirit, I think, a real kind of strong identity, partly because of the fact that it was independent for so many years, I think. And yeah, just really loved the environment. I was working in the arts at the time. I worked at Film House for a while, and then I worked at the Roxy Art House while I was down in Leith. And unfortunately, my time at the Roxy Art House was cut quite short. We were all made redundant after the charity buckled about 8 months into the role, and then found myself kind of on the dole, signing on, kind of back to square one in a lot of ways. And rather than kind of bemoan that situation, though it was kind of a really kind of sad time, because the Roxy Art House, for the time that it had been operating as we'd been operating it was a real kind of hub for activity. We were really open to people coming to us with, daft ideas. I want to, do some live art during this night where someone's going to be DJing and then there's going to be dancing, and yeah, you were just like, yes, this sounds brilliant. We'll provide the alcohol. So it kind of felt there was a real loss to my kind of local community and friends, that there wasn't really a place to go and there wasn't somewhere to be at the time. But rather than kind of bemoan this and complain and get unhappy about it, I decided to start putting on my own events. And start doing stuff myself and getting off my arse and doing that, which I did. And Leith Light was an example of the type of event that I felt I wanted to attend myself that wasn't there, and it was a way of showcasing my kind of local area and environment to a wider audience. Leith. I kind of around the same time. Since I kind of moved to Leith, Leith was undergoing a period of change itself. It had quite a negative reputation historically. Obviously, kind of this train-spotting image that was an archetype of the book. But around the time that I moved to Leith, Leith was kind of reinventing itself quite quietly and behind the scenes as a real kind of magnet for the creative community. And this was kind of due to the economic downturn and the fact that there was really kind of cheap rent that was attracting people like myself to come and live, work, have studio space in Leith. And I kind of track the new transformation, the transformation of Leith as kind of cultural centre back to 2004. And it comes to like the kind of transformation of two significant buildings, I feel. I mean, this is slightly before my time, obviously, because I moved to Leith shortly after. But one of the buildings that I think that kind of is an archetype of this change is Out the Blue. This is a picture of Out the Blue back there. Out the Blue used to be housed in New Street as the Bongo Club. And then when they were kind of evicted because the council were going to demolish the site, which is still empty, Out the Blue split in two, and the club side of it went to what was then Morey House, and the studios, which were also housed in New Street, and the kind of artist studio side of things came down to Leith and to a former territorial drill hall. So this is a picture from Leith Late in 2014, so it's now kind of a thriving hub. It houses artist studios, micro businesses, creative businesses. There's a performance and rehearsal space. There's printmakers now, and also this kind of big area where you can have exhibitions and a cafe. So there was this hub that had opened up. And also, I think, alcohol is really important. I find that really important with Leith Late, definitely. So the bar scene in Leith was changing too. It was kind of, known as a bit wild back in the day in Leith. And Boda opened also in 2004 in the former, what was known as the Lorne Bar. The Lorne Bar had been really famous, or notorious actually, is the better word, for a series of stabbings that had basically closed it down. And yeah, so Boda Bar opened in the wake of this by a couple, Anna and Mike Christofferson, whose kind of Swedish theme bars have now kind of proliferated through Edinburgh, and there's four in Leith. And interestingly, Anna wanted to open a bar. That was what she always said, that she wanted to open a bar where women kind of felt welcome and safe. So Boda was the first of its type in Edinburgh. So Leith had a pub and a hub, and it was all go after that. So there was a whole kind of series of studios started popping up, record shops, etc. And I think it's an interesting point that around this time, Leith had been kind of crucially overlooked by property developers and kind of underserviced, I think it's fair to say, by the council. So that the kind of grassroots cultural evolution and revolution that was happening around kind of the turn of the millennium was kind of a real natural progression, and it was kind of bottom up. It wasn't imposed or dictated from on high. Okay, so back where I come in. So 2011 was the year of the first Leith Late, which was kind of, as I say, just envisaged as a night of frivolity, and I suppose it was an idea of having the fun of an art opening, where you get booze and art in one place, and kind of extending that over a series of different spaces. So I think we build it as 2 hours, 10 venues, one after party, and we had 5 art spaces, a number of bars and pubs, and we also had in-store performances in a record shop and in a cafe, and it went really well. So yeah, out of it came kind of a lot of good things. Number one, people liked it, which was good. People came, so we started kind of wanting to do it again. It became an annual thing, but there was a real kind of transformative nature to the event. So firstly was kind of the transformation of spaces. So very early on in the evolution of the festival, we decided to use not to have kind of Leith Late to be only art spaces alone, but to have it kind of bleed over into kind of local businesses and include local businesses in what we were doing. So transforming local businesses into kind of spaces to showcase art as part of the event. This is kind of one of our most successful ones. A lot of our kind of site-specific art installations involve kind of going into a space, but this was one that was just on the street. This is the shop window of Leith Athletics, which is a great shop, and it was just an installation called Stuffland, and the artist had kind of made everything. It was all handmade and odd things. So the idea that you could be walking down the street, you might not know that there's something going on, but you can have something jump out at you was really exciting for us. This is kind of a funny photo. I think it was a transformation of the way you view things. I kind of like this photo because every year I like to have at least one or maybe two photographers going around, and you kind of document their journey. And this photographer just took this picture of kind of one of these slightly generic kind of bodybuilding mannequins in a shop in Leith Walk called Freak Body. They're actually, I think they're quite proud of being called Freak Body. I was like, do they know what they're? No, it's called Freak Body. They've got pop-ups that say Freak Body on it. So if you want a Freak Body, go to Freak Body. But the point is that once this kind of durational kind of performance almost across different spaces is going on, the people who are taking part in that and the spectators become kind of very much more interactive and very much part of it. So you kind of become slightly more attuned to your environment and what's going on. So something that you might pass every day, like the strange bodybuilding mannequin and Freak Body, becomes something of an interest and something to kind of notice and to think about in a different way, perhaps. And I kind of like that idea. That idea of taking people out of their everyday environment and just taking a little bit more notice into things that they pass every day, and kind of, finding the humour or the sadness, or the abyss that shops like Freak Body might present. And the other kind of transformative aspect of Leith Lake that came about shortly after our first event was the kind of the introduction of a whole series of public art initiatives, and this was due to kind of mostly being approached by the council, who are interested in ways of transforming kind of some of the sad spaces and drab spaces in Leith. So we started doing something called the Shutter Project, which is still ongoing, which is kind of brightening up what's quite grey and depressing, and livening up at different times of day, particularly obviously after business hours. And we also started a project called the Mural Project. This is a portrait of Plotzy down in Henderson Street. So kind of again, kind of targeting these spaces that are kind of empty, devoid of any life or love, and putting something there, and hopefully in the act of doing that, making people kind of re-examine their local environment a little bit closer. Okay, so while we were doing all this, like ferreting away, doing the festival every year, and kind of the ongoing public art initiatives that were taking place, the festival itself was undergoing change too. Leith Lake isn't really static. It's never been static. It's always kept changing and mutating. I've written here, a mutant. Which really kind of lets us experiment with the form and the reach of the event. So this is from 2014. This was when we expanded to a weekend event. We had 25 venues taking part in that one, and the festival stretched from the Collective Gallery on Calton Hill down to the Thomas Morton Hall at the end of Great Junction Street. So yeah, quite a haul. We also had a vintage red double-decker bus that year. Happy days. And then last year the festival changed again. So instead of having kind of a one night or a one weekend event, we decided it would be more manageable to extend it over 4 months. Because that's fine. So we had 4 months of activity between June and September, which really kind of allowed us again to kind of experiment with things that were, I suppose, a bit slower, because the festival's kind of got this kind of speed thing about it. there's not an awful lot of time to take your time. So certain things that we tried out, one thing that was really successful was doing a series of guided tours of some of the murals in Leith, old and new, and that was really, really successful, and something that we're going to bring back. And we also did an arts exchange between Leith and Copenhagen, which was cool. And over the time, the last 6 years that Leith Light has been in existence, Leith has also been continuing to change, obviously, as well. So it's evolving in its own way. In terms of the festival logistics and dynamics, we actually have lost a lot of the grassroots art spaces that were the kind of impetus for starting the festival in the first place, ironically. For example, 3 of the 5 original art spaces that were featured in the first Leith Light no longer exist. Which is okay, that's a transient thing. The thing that slightly worries me is that there's not an awful lot of grassroots art spaces popping up and taking their place, which is a concern. The kind of urban landscape has also changed. This lovely former social work building, in this picture here, that was left derelict for many years on Leith Walk, has now been demolished and replaced by a student property development. Of course, complete with a Sainsbury's and rumoured Starbucks to come. And that's only one of 2 student property developments that are currently taking place in Leith Walk, and there's about 3 others in the Easter Road, Abbey Hill area. And there's also been a kind of real rise of hipster pubs in the area, hipster bars, as Leith's kind of traditional old men's pubs are being kind of gradually replaced by 80s board game themed pubs. True story. And also, property prices are back on the rise. That's probably why these grassroots art spaces are not coming back so much. So, the future. What's the future for Leith and the future for Leith Light? So, obviously, kind of stuff that I was just describing just a second ago is very much kind of fits in with the notion of gentrification. So, kind of gentrification is a burgeoning challenge that Leith is kind of facing at the moment. It's something that I think that it's kind of resisted till now, but it's definitely becoming more of an issue, if issue is the word, in an area that kind of is striving to maintain its identity. For me, I think that Leith has got such a strong identity, and it's always had a kind of transient community coming through it, being kind of a traditional dock town anyway, that I'd hope that Leith could absorb and welcome and accept the new communities that are coming in, and kind of retain its kind of amazing uniqueness, and that these elements can all coexist amongst each other. And in terms of Leith Light is continuing to evolve itself, and to try and evolve and address some of the changes that are going on in Leith currently. So, for example, this year for the festival, we're going to be having a series of panel talks on one of the days of Leith Light. I'm actually going to make some announcements, so you'll know when it is. So we're having a series of panel talks that are going to directly address some of the issues that Leith is facing at the moment, such as gentrification, also the politics of public art or art in the public, also the value or perception of value of art, which is something that's really strong at the moment, I think. Alongside, hopefully, we want to do some tours of Leith's traditional pubs, and also we're bringing back the annual big one-night event. So, for your diaries, Leith Light 16. It's coming. It's going to be the 23rd to the 26th of June this year, with the big kind of one-night event taking place on the evening of the 23rd. And we're also happy to announce that Creative Scotland are supporting us again this year. So thanks, Creative Scotland. And thank you. I mean, if you want to say anything about Leith or Leith Light, or if you want to come and talk about your own projects too, that's fine. But if anyone has any comments, do holler. Hipsters. Yeah, maybe we're part of the problem. Yeah, someone on Facebook a few years ago said, nicknamed it Hipster Fest, and I thought that was quite funny, actually. So yeah, our demographic is young creative professionals between the ages of 25 and 35. Though they're getting older, I'm worried that because I'm getting older, they're getting older too. Just people, yeah, people. Just I'm replicating myself in audiences. But yeah, we would like to kind of we definitely are in previous years. We've been attracting older audiences, which is great. And one of them's in the crowd right now. And we do want to reach out to the new student community as well. And we'd like them to be a part of Leaflet and to feel that they're not just in any old student area like Newington, where I went to uni, but actually feel that they're part of something special and understand the excitement behind Leaflet and Leith.
And are you still open to collaborations for the Leith 16?
Well, we got quite a good programme which we're going to announce I think towards the end of this month. But if anyone wants to give me a shout, there's maybe a possibility we can fit you in. We're looking at maybe about 20 venues this year. So. Leith Walk, and we're going to stick just to Leith Walk, I think.
Does anyone have any questions for Morvern?
Sorry, you just said it just sticks to Leith Walk, but what about Easter Road?
Yeah, I mean, it's sticking to Leith Walk this year. As I say, in previous years, we've gone down Great Junction Street as well. Easter Road is somewhere that I'd like to work in. The trouble with Easter Road is it's kind of residential for the second half, really, so it's not so much of a run. I think that the kind of fun behind Leaflet is the proximity of venues towards each other. So it's an idea of, if you were coming to somewhere and you wanted to go to one place, you don't want to walk 3 or 4 blocks to get somewhere else. You want to be like, where's the next thing? Where's the next thing? Where's the pint? Where's the art? So I'm always thinking kind of logistically. I don't want people to be walking for more than 5 to 10 minutes without having something else to do. But yeah, there's some really cool furniture places and kind of odd little spaces in Easter Road that would be fun to use at some point. But we might need to have some kind of things in between Easter Road and Leith Walk to kind of join up all the dots. Yeah, there is a team. I'd look much older than I am if it was just me. But there's a committee of 10 folk, and it's kind of and then quite a lot of those folk actually have come from the start. Or it's funny, some of the committee, I often look through old, photographs and documentation of over the years, and I notice members of the committee who were there before I knew them. So it's kind of a bunch of friends who mostly kind of live and work in Leith, and are just kind of passionate about what they do. Yep, it's a voluntary. The committee's voluntary anyway. And if we can get funds, which we have done, and people are doing actual activities such as tour guides or the design or coordination, then yeah, Creative Scotland allows us to actually pay people half decently rather than a pittance. So, thanks, Creative Scotland. Yeah. I mean, well, not people often talk about the spraying on the pavements. I've never asked permission from that, and I always do them personally. I reckon if the council can go around and go, knives, not whatever, lives, or no, the other way around. Sorry, lives, not knives, and dog poo and stuff. Then I can too as well. In terms of the public art stuff, there's kind of different things. So the Shutter Project, it's businesses. So you just need to get the business to be on site. I say just, I mean, it's easy enough to get permission, but then actually finding an artwork that both the artist is happy with and the business is happy with is not always the easiest. In terms of some of the other stuff, we've worked with kind of local community groups. it tends to be speaking to kind of individual owners, but as long as people aren't expected to kind of be responsible for upkeep, and we always say, no, you're not, they tend to be cool with it because it looks nicer than it did before, hopefully.
I was just wondering if you've had much resistance from, I don't know, the council or local residents, or what unusual avenues of support have you had?
Yeah, not from the council. The council have been really supportive. They don't have a lot of cash at the moment, but they have been financially supportive in a time when we weren't getting money from necessarily anywhere else. I suppose in the way that Leith Lake kind of operates and kind of pays for itself, traditionally what we did was, and we still do, is the bars. I never charge art spaces for being a part of Leith Lake, because I would, without the art, then, have you ever heard that? Without the art, the world is just I think it's so naff. But without the art, Leith Lake wouldn't happen. It wouldn't have any kind of soul. Wouldn't be any point. So I never charge the art spaces, but the bars make a killing, obviously, at Leith Lake. So we asked them to give us money. So they partly support it. So the local businesses who are taking part in it partly support it. And also there's the after party, where we kind of generate funds through booze and ticket sales. And resistance, you're talking about resistance. So yeah, it's kind of a self-supporting festival in that sense. I think that it's something that I was talking about, I think, to Duncan earlier, but I didn't really mention it too much in this talk, and maybe I should have. Is that there's a real kind of shift going on, obviously, as you can tell from my talk, what's happening in Leith, between kind of old and new Leith, and kind of stoic, traditional Leith, and kind of then all these kind of young hipsters running around and doing stuff. And for the most part, I find Leith as a community and as a kind of mindset really open and really welcoming and absorbing. I think I mentioned that, just the idea of a kind of absorbing stuff. But some of the public art stuff we have come up against kind of just individuals' resistance. I remember one guy shout on our first mural project, shouting us down off the scaffolding, going, "What are you doing? Who's paying for this?" I live around here. You never asked me. We had been working with local community members for that one, and I think. I think for him, I see him actually now quite a lot, and he says he loves it, and he's actually an advocate for the for the artwork. I think that there is that kind of element of shifting and negotiation, but I see the kind of real kind of battle lines at the moment, if there are battle lines, being drawn in the pub scene, and that's a kind of real difficult kind of contentious area. Whereas these kind of traditional bars and pubs. These pubs are kind of closing down and kind of being taken over as other things. I mean, I think Boda's great. I love Boda, and I wouldn't slag that. There's other bars in Leith that I think are kind of really generic, and they'll just slap up some tiles and give it a funny name and serve things on slates, and it's just like, what? But it's weird, the kind of the change that I've seen in Leith. I live in Dalmeny Street, and the Dalmeny bar used to be kind of the thing at the end of the street. Guys would smoke outside. You'd have darts and karaoke at the weekends, and now it's turned into Serrano and Chego, where there's a cured venison leg in the window, and people eating pinchos, and it's just a bit strange. I think I'm now at the point where I've been in Leith for so long that I'm starting to kind of resent the change in the way that maybe some of the people who've been there a little bit longer kind of feel the same way, and I think it's just a way. It's just trying to say that these things are really important. I think that the old men's pubs are really important, and I don't think that they should be closing down. But if people don't go and drink in them, then they will close down. So I'm gonna take the hipsters into those pubs, and I'm gonna buy them a pint of beer, and hope that there's some way that these things can coexist, and that we don't kind of just have a series of kind of chain pubs and on Leith Walk. But yeah, it's a difficult, contentious issue, and I'm not, but that's kind of where it's at. To the pub!